In this lesson, we'll be improving the model around the pool and the terrace. So the part that we're going to work on is this edge that basically wraps around the pool, the terrace, and then underneath this whole area here. What I'd like to do, just to show you how easy it is to edit the model that we've created so far, is to basically continue with the idea of this room flow edge all the way around and include this back facing edge. That means that when we're inside our living room down here, we can look at the room flow as well, flowing on the other side of this area. So what we're going to do to make that happen is let's start by modifying the actual basin of the pool, the structure supporting the water. Let's go and delete these polys to basically lower that edge. Next, let's go and continue with this water catchment drain that we have running around. And we're going to do that by going down to the line at the bottom of the modifier stack. And we're going to choose to extend that line. So you can right click and choose Create Line. Then you can click on 2 points that are anywhere on your model, which basically are the right direction and distance. Then you can take that line that you've created and just lift it up and snap it exactly into place. If you are able to, you can also snap onto this point originally and then snap onto something here, but I don't actually have any object to snap it onto here. This is basically floating in space. That's why I used a reference object right below. Next, I'm going to choose these two vertices, and you can see that there are two selected, and I'm going to right click and weld them together. Then I'm going to right click again and choose corner. Now once you go to your top level, you will see that the sweep command and the edit poly that we have already in our modifier stack basically completes the object with no other work necessary. So this is quite nice, so you don't have to really model anything, you just have to extend the line. Next, what we're going to do is the same thing but to the water. The difference with the water is that we don't have a sweeped object, so we need to do it in a slightly different way. We're going to choose the edges that are on this left hand side, and in the top view we're going to stretch them across holding down Shift on our keyboard. Next, we're going to move the vertices into place, and before we do that we're just going to undo the mesh smooth modifier since it does deform the model quite a lot. So let's shift this across, deselect this one, shift it across, deselect, and shift the last one across. Next, we're going to model this part here that goes all the way to the edge of the terrace, and instead of modeling this afresh, starting with these edges, which we could of course do that and then add segments and then move all the vertices just like we did originally, but the quicker way to do it would be to just take what you already have, namely this portion here, and let's go and just select all of the right polys for that. And then let's go and, holding down Shift, move it across all the way to the side, making a new object. Next, we're going to reset the pivot point since it is sitting all the way up here. We can do that by going into the hierarchy, Effect Pivot Point Only, Center to Object, and that will basically center it over there. Meaning now when we mirror it, it's mirroring on its own axis and not somewhere off in the distance on your scene. So now with this new mirrored object that we have, let's go and merge it and attach it to this original water object that we have here. We're going to now move these three vertices into place, so let's just snap them and deselect as we go along. The last one down here, let's just check that this is all done correctly. Next, we're going to take this object at the edit poly level and we're going to right click and attach it to this new object, and just have a look that your polys are facing in the right direction, because now that we mirrored it, it is all facing internally. In other words, it's facing into the pool instead of out. So let's flip that. And lastly, let's right click, go to your vertex, select these vertices, and you will see here that you have 8 of them selected, which means that you need to weld them together. So just right click, choose weld, and you now see that you have 4. Now once you turn on your mesh smoothing, you'll see that the whole object has been nicely and neatly mesh smoothed. Next, we're going to go up to the top of the water level. Basically, we have the noise affecting the whole object, which we're going to look at shortly. And we also have the tessellate modifier. So we're going to add an edit poly on top of the tessellate, and we're going to choose these edges that are in this area which need to be edited. So let's just make that selection, and then we're going to hold down Shift and basically move that across. Let's just look in plan view, and try get it as close as possible visually to that point. You may or may not have something to snap to. If you can, definitely try use your snap so that you have more accuracy. Otherwise, just working by eye does work most of the time. Over here, you have a little scenario where the smoothing is rounding off the corner. So you can go and chamfer this vertex right at the end and basically line up all of these vertices if you do want. But I'm going to let you do that in your own time. What I do want to show you though is once you apply your noise modifier, it is going to tear apart the model slightly. So what you want to do in this edit poly is select your border first of all, then control click your vertex, which is going to convert your border selection to a set of vertices, and then choose Control I on your keyboard. That's going to select all of the vertices in the entire swimming pool except the ones on the border. Now once you go to your noise modifier is only affected in the internal area where those vertices are selected. So that is really helpful because you are not going to have any tearing apart happening on this edge. So for most of the case, you will actually have a nice clean line where these two objects are merging together. Now if you really wanted to be ultra clean about it, you would want to align all of these verticals with these areas coming down. So you may want to choose to tessellate your entire pool and then take all of those edges and stretch them downwards as we did for this original object. So just giving you a few tips when you go and do this type of modeling on your own projects. Next, what we want to do is to create this area over here. So namely, we're going to add a wall here and then a planter into this area. And note as well that we already have a planter up here, so we can start to use similar ways of treating these areas where we're going to have plants growing on our building. So I'm going to first of all just isolate this, and in my top view I'm going to start to draw some of these individual wall objects. Let me just choose walls as my current layer, and I'm going to now outline this object. Next I'm going to extrude it upwards. Can choose 2 meters. And before I go back into my main model, let's just trace the outline of this edge over here, which we can also extrude at the same time. Now with these two objects, let's go back into our model and see how we can modify all of that. We can first of all move everything so that it can just snap onto the bottom of the terrace here. And let's also now move this wall downwards so that it is below the water catchment area. So you just want to make it just about there. It's fine if this interpenetrates, that's perfectly fine. Next, we want to make a few local changes to this wall. We need to extrude it slightly higher, or rather just take the edit poly and take the edge and just pull it until you can snap it onto this part of the terrace. So that means you now have a wall in this area and the pool is basically rim flowing over that edge, and you have quite an interesting scenario happening there. So lastly, just before we finish this lesson, we are going to make a small patch of ground, and what I suggest is that you just take already made or existing pieces of that terrain, and you can basically just move it downwards. Do everything by eye. Make sure you copy it, don't instance it. Move it into the right place, and you can basically just start to edit those polys there. You can also redraw it. There's nothing wrong with redoing, but I always like to rather copy and modify. Just out of principle, it's often much easier. You're always guaranteed that things are the right color, on the right layer, and have the right modifiers in the stack. So now I'm going to add some more width to it. And lastly, I'm going to move this vertex up, and then the tessellate will apply over that object. Now let's move it into the right height, which will be roughly about here, just below that edge of the wall, and there we have it. Lastly, let's just take these objects that we've created and choose to put them on the wall layer, make sure that that's correct, and let's change the color to be by layer, which means it'll be orange just like the rest of our walls. So pretty much now we're getting there. We've got most of the terrace done. We still need to put a balustrade onto the terrace at this point here, just that whole edge. So I'm going to do that off camera. It's going to be exactly the same thing that we've done up here, so I won't be showing it to you in the video. And in the next lesson, we're going to look at how we can sculpt the site mesh, which is all of this. I'm going to at the same time just turn off all the CAD information, and we're going to now have a look at how we can finalize this building to make this look quite impressive. We're going to make this wall a little bit less deep. We're going to rather have this cantilevering over the edge, and we're going to see how we can go and modify that, as well as change some of the areas locally on this site mesh. So that's going to be quite exciting as we start to get into the final stages of modeling for this building.